One of the articles that I could really kind of relate to since I'm doing a podcast and that I think was really smart was the one on voice and Alexa and why businesses should be caring about Alexa and Google Assistant, etc.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. That was something I did recently here in Canada for the Globe and Mail, which is one our basically our national newspaper. Um, the really interesting thing that's happening with these voice assistants is there's a lot of interesting things, I guess. One of I think probably one of the most interesting parts is the whole privacy side of it. Everybody's very concerned about having microphones that are always on in their homes. The potential for abuse there is you don't have to be very imaginative to see how that could go wrong. But if you look at the upside of it, there's also a lot of benefit that these voice assistants are delivering, which is, I think, probably explains why the Echo speakers and the Google Home speakers are so popular. They're really selling very quickly. But the way that they stand to change the internet is I think probably the most interesting part of it, because when you do, Google has basically changed our lives, right? Obviously. So when you go and you do a Google search, let's say you're looking for the best hamburger around you, you'll do a search on your phone or on your desktop or on your laptop, and you'll get a page of results. And I don't know how many are on that page. Maybe it's 8 or 9 or 10. If you don't like those, you can click onto the next page,
Yep.
and there's thousands of pages. I think probably very few people actually click past the first page, but nevertheless, you still have a bunch of choices there. When you are using one of these voice assistants to do the same kind of search, let's say you're looking for a hamburger restaurant, they typically only give you three, or I think Google Home gives you four. I believe Alexa gives you
Hmm.
three, or I might have that backwards. But in any
Yeah.
event, you've got three or four choices. So that really narrows down how important the search is, or how important it is for you as a business to be within those top three results. You're no longer on that first page, so you can't afford to be eighth or ninth or whatever. You
Hmm.
have to be basically in the top three. So that's really going to put a lot of pressure on businesses to make sure that they're, even more so showing up in those search algorithms, and basically being recognized by Google and by Alexa, which I believe uses Bing, Microsoft's Bing, for its search results. So you got to make sure you're in those top results, or you're kind of doomed. And what's interesting here is that, according to some of those predictions out there, voice search is eventually going to make up the majority of searches within the next few years. I can't remember what the actual stat is now, but it's going to cross that 50% threshold relatively soon.
Yeah, I think people are talking about 40% now. But I think it depends. But to what you said, I actually tested it myself, and this is why I brought up this article as kind of the first talking point, because I was getting a whiteboard, and right before getting a whiteboard, I got an Alexa, so I thought I'd just test it. So I said, Alexa, I want to buy a whiteboard, and then it just asked me, "Do you really want to buy it?" And I said yes, and then it just bought it. And the whiteboard that it bought was the one that was recommended by Amazon, right? So that's kind of another pillar of how businesses, in my opinion, should be thinking about. Because then it's good if you are kind of top one, two, three, but then if you are also recommended by Amazon, which coincidentally or not was Amazon Basics, then to me this kind of raises some competition points here. I use Alexa as a kind of search engine, and then it kind of spreads onto the brand of the good that I'm buying. What do you think about this?
Yeah, that sounds to me pretty blatantly anti-competitive, and I can't imagine Amazon's going to be able to get away with that for very long. And
Yeah.
it's not just the voice too, right? This happens on the website and on their apps. You get a lot of Amazon, because it's kind of like the Amazon white label. It's like if you go to a grocery store, most grocery stores have their own private white label goods. But in most cases, they don't really push those more so than, say, like Heinz ketchup or whatever. You won't get your grocery store shoving their ketchup down your throat. which is effectively what Amazon is doing here. They're basically giving priority to their own white label goods. I do, there's so there's a bit of nuance there, but I think if they're going too far with that, especially with the voice, I think that's pretty clearly anti-competitive, and I'm sure somebody is going to slap their wrist for that relatively soon.
Got it. And what you mentioned at the beginning when you just started talking about voice and Alexa, you said that people are talking about the downside of it, yet there is the amazing kind of disproportionate upside. Could you kind of elaborate on that? What is the upside in the way you see it?
Yeah, there's a lot of upsides. I have these things all over my house, so if this whole privacy nightmare comes to pass, I'm really, really screwed. Because there's not a room in my house that isn't mic'd up.
Mm.
But I mean, for me, I guess I'm kind of an early adopter, and I'm using the voice assistants for pretty much everything these days. I have, of course, all kinds of smart home devices. So I have cameras, I have lights, I have robot vacuum cleaners, and so on. In fact, it's kind of funny because when our internet cuts out every now and then, and the first time this happened, my wife and I were like, "How do we turn the lights off?" We don't remember how to turn the lights off. So that was kind of frightening, but so yeah, I mean the benefits, just simple home control, asking Google. Well, I can't say those words because something's going to activate.
I turned off my Alexa before the podcast.
I ask it for information all the time. What time is the nearest Costco open till? How do I get to? Or how long does it take to get downtown? What's the traffic like? What's the weather like? Etc. Etc. These are all things. I mean, I could do them on my phone. I could do them on my computer, but they're just using the voice assistants is a lot. It's just very time saving.
Mhm.
And then I also use it on my phone when I'm driving. So there's clear benefits there. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of I don't know, where do we even start? There's tons of benefits.